Recovery is possible.
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 Recovery dialogues and sober stories.
Welcome back to Recovery Dialogues and Sober Stories. I'm Antonio Matta, and today we're trying something a little different. For a while now, I've wanted to get even closer to the heart of what this show is about. Real conversations, honest questions, and the kind of support we all need, especially when recovery feels uncertain. So, in between our guest interviews, I'll be dedicating episodes to answering your questions, drawing from the stories, curiosities, and even struggles that come up in our community, whether from email, social, or the corners of the internet where these conversations are happening. And don't worry, I promise I won't answer questions like, does pineapple belong on pizza? Unless, of course, that's the key to your recovery, in which case we might need a whole special episode. Let's jump right in with a question that so many wrestle with, even if we rarely say it out loud.
Hello, Antonio. Does anyone else feel scared of recovery, like staying in the darker spaces feels more comforting than stepping into the light?
You're not alone in this. In fact, this is one of the most honest, quietly powerful questions I hear, maybe more than any other. It's natural to want recovery, but it's also natural to be afraid of it. Sometimes what's familiar, even pain, even the so-called darkness, feels safer than the unknown. And that's not weakness. That's part of how the human brain and heart try to protect us. Let's talk about the science. Research shows there's something called emotional inertia, the way our emotional states, especially negative ones, start to reinforce themselves just through repetition. If you've spent a long time in sadness, anxiety, or addiction, those states actually start to feel predictable. There's a comfort in knowing what tomorrow will bring, even if tomorrow is hard. It's like living in a familiar room, even if that room is dark and cramped. You know where the furniture is. The unknown light of recovery can feel risky. What if you stumble? What if you don't recognize yourself in the brightness? You know, something that struck me over years of studying Hermetic philosophy and esoteric Christianity is this. People will often be willing to give up anything, but they're suffering. Some texts even go so far as to say that we become addicted to our pain. I can relate to that. There were times in my own life when I truly couldn't imagine myself without a steady undercurrent of misery or sadness. It became a part of my identity, so familiar it almost felt necessary. And without even realizing it, I'd sabotage my own progress, holding myself back just enough to stay in the same rut, the same old place of darkness and suffering. That's the paradox. Sometimes we cling to our pain because it's the one thing we know how to carry. When you live in darkness for a long time, it becomes part of your story. Who am I without this pain, without this habit, without this shield? Leaving that darkness isn't just about feeling better. It's about losing part of who you've been, sometimes for years. And that can feel like a kind of grief. Your brain is wired for habit and safety. Even if the safety comes with suffering, it's what you know. For people with a history of trauma or insecure attachments, that pull is even stronger. Sometimes darkness is the first place we learn to feel at home. Neurologically, addiction changes the brain's reward system. Stress, trauma, and substance use can rewire the circuits that help us cope, leaving us stuck, not because we're broken, but because the brain is doing what it's been trained to do, survive. When we talk about recovery, we're not just talking about quitting a substance, a behavior, or a thought pattern. We're talking about rewriting your story, rebuilding your identity, and risking the pain of loss. Loss of old friends, old routines, even old comfort and sadness. That can feel like jumping off a cliff without knowing if there's a net. Let's be real, society doesn't make it easier. Stigma around addiction and mental health runs deep. For some, especially in certain communities or cultures, seeking help can feel like betrayal or weakness, adding yet another layer to the fear of stepping out. So, what actually helps? Gentle, gradual change. The research is clear. Recovery is most sustainable when it happens in small, supported steps. Honoring the past. We don't shame the part of ourselves that clung to darkness. We thank it for protecting us, even if it's time to move on. Therapeutic support. Connection matters. Safe, trauma-informed therapy, sometimes focused on attachment or narrative work, can help us slowly reimagine who we are. Mindfulness and self-compassion. These aren't just buzzwords. They're tools to bridge the gap between pain and possibility. And rebuilding identity. You get to create a self not defined by suffering, but by resilience and hope. If you're scared to recover, you're not failing. You're being human. It's okay to be afraid of the light. Sometimes it's blinding at first, but trust this, you're not alone and you don't have to leap all at once. Even a small, brave step toward the door is worth celebrating. If you're still with me after that existential deep dive, give yourself a gold star, or at least a cup of tea. We're going even deeper. For some, the pain of recovery isn't just about fear, it's about feeling completely untethered from reality or even from yourself. Our next question is from someone who wrote,
Hi, Antonio. I escaped trauma, but now I feel lost in derealization and self-doubt. What's the first step toward feeling like myself again?
First off, thank you for this question. It's one of the most vulnerable and one that resonates deeply with me and with so many in our community. Trauma, especially the complex kind, the sort that stretches on or hits us again and again, can shatter our sense of self. Suddenly, you're not just carrying pain, you're carrying confusion about what's real and who you even are. For me, living with a complex PTSD has at times obliterated the person I thought I was. There are moments when I look back at my before self, and it's honestly shocking to compare that person to who I am now as I continue healing from all the residual effects. Derealization isn't just in your head. Research shows trauma changes the way our brains work, affecting memory, emotion, and even the body's sense of presence. The world can start to feel distant or dreamlike, and your own life can seem like a story you're watching from the outside. It's a protective response, a way your mind tries to keep you safe from overwhelming threat, but it can leave you feeling cut off from your own reality. So what's the first step? Grounding. Mindfulness and grounding practices are a lifeline. Simple sensory exercises, naming 5 things you see, 4 you can touch, 3 you hear, 2 you smell, 1 you taste, bring you back to here and now. Mindful breathing, feeling your feet on the ground, holding something cold or textured. These are all practical ways to anchor yourself when you feel that drift into unreality. Our bodies hold trauma just as much as our minds. Gentle movement, like stretching, walking, or even progressive muscle relaxation, helps reconnect you with yourself. And if words feel too hard, creative practices like art, music, or journaling let you express what might be impossible to say. These approaches, grounding, movement, creativity are backed by science and by real lived experience. Therapy can be life-changing, especially approaches like trauma-focused CBT or EMDR, which gently help process memories and challenge the story that trauma wrote for you. But here's what matters most. Recovery isn't about erasing the past. It's about weaving those hard experiences into a story where you are the survivor, not just the survivor of trauma, but the author of what comes next. If you feel unrecognizable to yourself, you're not alone. Trauma changes us, but it doesn't have to define us forever. One thing I've learned is that you can build a new sense of self brick by brick. Each grounding moment, each kind word to yourself, each safe connection, these are the materials of the new identity you're forging. The past is always a part of you, but it isn't all of you. So if you're lost in derealization and self-doubt, remember, your sense of self isn't gone. It's waiting for you underneath the pain. The first step is always the smallest, grounding yourself in the present. And with time, those small moments build into a path back to who you are. Maybe not who you were before trauma, but who you're becoming because of the strength and wisdom you've gained. If there's one thread tying these questions together, it's this. Recovery is never a straight line, and it's never just about fixing what's broken. It's about learning to carry ourselves, our stories, and even our fears with a bit more compassion day by day. Every question, every doubt is an invitation to grow into the person you're becoming. And none of us are meant to do it alone. If you want your question featured on a future episode, or you just want to reach out, you can always email me or DM me on social. Your story, your struggle, your curiosity, they're all welcome here. Before we wrap up, a quick reminder, if you'd like to help keep recovery dialogues and sober stories going, there are a few ways you can support the mission. If you or someone you know wants to sponsor an episode, just reach out. There are sponsorship opportunities open. Our GoFundMe is still active at gofundme.com/recovery dialogues. Every bit helps cover the basics and lets us reach more people who need these conversations. And if you want to wear your recovery, literally, check out the Recovery Dialogues shop at recoverydialogues.com. There you'll find mantra apparel and accessories, all designed to spark conversation and promote hope. Every purchase directly supports the show and the bigger mission. Thanks for being here. However you're listening, wherever you are on your path, remember, you're part of this dialogue and your story matters. Until next time, take what you need, leave what you don't, and keep going.
Recovery is possible.
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 Recovery dialogues and sober stories.